is just a follow-up, I guess I'll call it that, to 2 weeks ago. We had a workshop, agenda item, we have PowerPoint, presented by the Finance Director, Paul Adams, on a proposal of how the town possibly could utilize the slightly over 4.05 million of ARPA funds in the 3 categories that were proposed, and subsequent discussion and all that. And I know that, and there was a very good discussion on this. I'm going to hand the baton to you, Paul, because I know, I'm pretty certain because of subsequent discussions, emails, this and that, you have filed, you are ahead of the April 30th. So I'll leave you with that.
There was a webinar that was held on Monday, which was extremely helpful, and it was held by the Department of Treasury. And I wish it had been held about a month ago. It would have been very helpful. Because I think everybody in the state was very confused. There were 3,700 municipalities on the call. But it clarified a lot of things. As it turns out, we were able to file the report and claim the whole amount as revenue loss and take what they call the standard allowance, which gives us complete flexibility as to how we spend it. But the way I did it, I set up as 3 projects. One for grants, which we talked about, $350,000. That amount is flexible. $2.5 million for the wastewater treatment plant Phase 2 project, and a third project, $1,200,000, $860, I think it was, for general government services, which we certainly spend on a host of different things. We touched on some of that 2 weeks ago, but it doesn't have to be decided on tonight. We can talk about it over the next few weeks or a couple months. So I think we just want to make sure everyone's in agreement with the initial proposal. That's the first step. And I also developed a grant application and an FAQ document, which we'd like to post out on the website next week. So I think you probably all had a chance to review it. If you don't have any issues with it, we can go forward with it. I know Patty brought up one issue, I think it's on page 5 of the FAQ. It actually mentions that the grant can only be used to cover expenses incurred after March 1st, 2020 that have not already been reimbursed through other programs such as CARES Act, Payment Protection Program, etc. So I guess the question is, do we really want to make it that restrictive? Or do we just, we're not really concerned if there are other reimbursements?
Yeah, and I only brought it up because it appeared to be conflicting with something farther down on the page that said that it could be.
Right.
So I was just looking for clarification on that.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know that we want to restrict it based on other forms of assistance that the applicant may have received. Yeah, we're going to look at the whole picture, so
Yeah.
it's going to be a robust application.
So, Paul, if I understand this correctly, you can't make this stuff up. So on Monday, April 25th, with 5 days to, the federal government said, you have to file this.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't give the final rule until April 1st, right?
Correct, right.
And then 3,700 municipalities get on this webinar because they're all in the same position as us. We're like, how does this work? So if I understand this correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, that when we came here on the 14th and presented to break down the 3 categories, thinking that the way we were interpreting it, that by April 30th, you at least got to lock down what's in general government services.
Yes.
So it almost makes you have to lock down the 3 categories if you decide to go to these 3 categories.
Correct.
Your clarification was that really it's more generic, that you can just do the whole 4 million for filing purposes.
Correct, yeah, as standard allowance.
standard allowance and without getting into all that, has this changed? Is the commitment of the monies still December 31st, 2024?
Correct, that has not changed.
Okay. Is the expenditure of the money December 31st, 2026?
Correct, yeah, obligated by 24, spend it by the end of 26.
Okay. I'm almost done with my questions. A nice one. So were you at least put in, based on the spirit or whatever of how the board has been talking about this, here's what we're thinking about for the three categories. Category 1, in no particular order, but there's a reason why I'm doing it in this order. I'll do it by the size. Sewer is $2.5 million. Sewer is a town government function.
Correct.
A town government function that whatever we do with that in expenditures has to be done by either the budget, taxing our residents, getting grants, or utilizing this ARPA money. But it's a government function, town government function. 1.2 million is category 2. That is general government services. Runs the gamut. You had the PowerPoint up here the other day. It showed IT infrastructure, the comprehensive plan. I mean, we could go on and on, right?
Sure.
But it's a government function. That's the common denominator to that. It's a town government function that all of those bullet points that come under general government services, we would either be paying for those in our budgets that we tax the residents, through grants, or in this case, this money.
Yeah.
In the third category, which right now we have slotted at $350,000, is a category that I think we're going to probably do the most discussion on tonight, of going to agencies, entities that are outside of town government, non-for-profits or whatever, but that's based on this FAQ and all this. What they do is for the good of Webster residents.
That's right.
I could list down off the top of my head about 20 different agencies and entities like that. So I want to make sure I understand something, is that because the numbers, at least in spirit, are 2.5, 1.2, and 350, if all of a sudden the board agrees to this time schedule of when entities, we open the portal for them to apply, when they have to have their application in by, and when the town is going to decide, July 8th, on who gets awarded. Am I right in assuming that you're saying that if we decide based on the applications we get and what situations these entities have had and we discern, could we award an aggregate of $400,000?
Yes.
Does everybody understand that?
It's flexible.
It's flexible.
Or 500,000.
Or 5 months.
Geez, thanks, John.
I just had to throw it.
Or, if you want me to be the Dutch uncle,
No.
we might see that nobody's really qualified for this based on mean, whatever, and we only give out 200,000.
Yeah, might do 200.
And if it's less than 350 or it's more than 350, this is simple math, then the 2.5 million for the sewer, the 1.2 million for general services is dollar for dollar effect.
Right. Right.
Okay,
And this will become clear once we get through the grant process.
okay. So it looks as though, you know, and I appreciate that you got out the FAQ. Right now, if the town board has looked at this, and I appreciate that maybe they haven't, because this thing, just like Paul said, this is coming fast and furious. I hate to say typical government, but April 1st was the final ruling. We talked about that on April 14th, you know, or whatever. And April 25th is when you went to a webinar that kind of gave you guidance on how to do this, which all's well that ends well. I like the way it's structured. How does the board feel about these proposed timeframes and the FAQs and and going forward with monies in a category that is outside of government services. At least on paper right now, earmarked is $350,000.
I just want to be sure that, because there was some robust discussion at our last meeting on what those numbers and how that should be appropriated, I just want to be sure that we do have board consensus on an approximation of the numbers as you just stated them. I know that it was something that was proposed last time, and there was, as I said, robust discussion on why it should be something different. And we've all had some time to think about it, and now we're learning that there could still be some leeway, but I think it's only right that we do have consensus on those numbers moving forward. As I said, an approximation.
I would agree with the approximation with the understanding that it is flexible, and we can take another look at it based upon the amount of applicants that we receive. I'd like that flexibility there.
I agree.
And I guess the other question I would have is, as to the process itself in making decisions as to who's awarded these monies and how much, what is, that process hasn't really been defined to me.
Yeah. Because
Because
you are absolutely
we're
correct.
going to stick to a timeline. I'd like to see that timeline sped up, obviously, as I stated before. A lot of these 501c3s can utilize these funds sooner than later. And I think the sooner that we define the decision-making process, and Paul, you did a fantastic job with this application, very comprehensive, fantastic job. I just don't want to see these applications come in and then they sit for a while. So I'd like to set up some sort of, just understand what the structure will be of making these decisions.
I think the biggest things we have to decide is there's going to be a subcommittee. But as far as the timeline is concerned, I think the timeline is spot on. I agree with you that these organizations have needed this additional funding for a while. But for those who haven't realized that there could be this grant process, they need time to pull all this information together. And honestly, I don't think it's a lot of time that we are giving them.
I agree.
So I think that the timeline is pretty fair to everybody.
And how, the other question I had is how are we as a town board going to communicate to these agencies that are applicable to
Yeah,
fill these out? I mean, that's very important, because the last thing I would want to see is, you know, someone or a business or an agency that could have submitted an application, for some reason didn't get the word,
Yeah.
and then we close out the grant
Right.
for application process. So that's
No doubt.
very important.
Big time. And you know, it's funny, John, because where I agree with Patty that the timeline, I think, is spot on for a lot of reasons. And just, there's only 3 tangible dates here.
Right.
May 2nd is when the portal opens up. Now, that's Monday. It's Thursday.
Yeah.
So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. That leads to your question, like, I would, you know, I'm a big communication person. How do we get communication out to all the potential 501c3s, nonprofits, agencies that are non-town Webster government, so that they're aware that between May 2nd and May 31st, they can apply for that? It's a great question. I have some ideas on it. You know, I could write my article for the May 4th Supervisor's Corner that goes on our website and all that. Karen, who's behind the door, I'm sure she's salivating with ideas on how to blast it out on Facebook and all that. Kim Doyle and myself, who deal with all these different agencies, and I really don't want to name names right now.
Right.
But in the last 28 months since I've been supervisor, I've gone to a lot of board meetings of non-for-profits and agencies in Webster that service Webster. You know, so I think we will be able to have a robust way to get the word out there. Because I agree with you, Jen, the last thing I would ever like to hear and see is that someone walks up to us on June 3rd and says, we're an agency that helps a lot of Webster citizens, and we didn't know about this, and now the portal's been closed. Now, once May 31st comes, now we've got until July 7th to vet those applications. I don't know if one will come in or if 50 will come in. Now, I have some ideas on a subcommittee to vet them, but I'm not going to get into that right now. The beauty is that because this is kind of a fluid thing, we're having to change all that, I would think in the next week or two, we need to, as a board or whatever, come up with what that process is going to be. Who is going to be that subcommittee? How then are they going to come to the board so that the decisions can be made by July 7th? Right? I don't think that has to be decided tonight.
So you're saying that your vision is that we'll have a subcommittee will review the applications, discuss amongst themselves the merit, make a decision as to how much money they should be awarded out of that $350,000, or if it's going to be more than $350,000 based upon their review of the applications. They will then bring that to the board for a full vote, correct? So you're not going to have two board members making the decision for all these.
No.
No, I think
Absolutely not.
the subcommittee should be an advisory subcommittee.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
That's just what I would think.
It's an advisory subcommittee, and here's the thing, and this is the beauty or the downside of open meetings. You think we can come in here at an open meeting and start to have discussions about an entity's financials and all that stuff?
Of course not.
So that's why I would love to, I want to set up almost, Paul, like, here's some tangible metrics. Let's take some of the subjectivity out of it, because everybody's got an opinion. Like,
Well,
if somebody is like, you're on boards, right, Patty? So by definition, you're biased to that vocation, whatever that board does. And that's good. But we're in the seat of government. We have to get beyond that and make sure that we're awarding this based on merit and need, not on just pure emotion.
So
if we can set up metrics to minimize the subjectivity and emotion, I think that would be a very wise decision that helps guide this subcommittee, advisory committee, who then they can come to the board. First of all, the board is going to have to get a report by June 1st of, well, here's how many applications we got. Here's the aggregate of what they asked for. They start their work, and as we move toward July 7th, yeah, I would like to think it would be the 5-person on the board deciding which of these entities that apply get it, and how much each get.
And to keep the spirit of objectivity in this process, as you are putting together metrics, I would suggest that that metrics is in place before the applications come in, or the applications are reviewed.
Yeah, I mean, by June 1st, they better be in place.
Okay,
They just don't need to be in place tonight.
I understand that now.
Yeah,
I'm
but
just
I don't want us to be sitting here on July 6th like, oh shoot, let's get the advisory committee together, it's July 6th. We need to now fast track this because we said we're going to award by the 7th. That's not how this process should work.
Okay.
We should be moving along right on June 1st, 2nd, 3rd, whatever,
Yep.
with trying to get ahead of this.
Right, everything will be in place.
Yep. All right. Bill?
I'm fine with that. My biggest question was, why can't we give some of this money to our taxpayers?
I would say that general services, 1.2 million, the sewer, whatever, because it's all flexible. Let me put it this way, Bill, I'm glad you asked that, because you know what's gonna happen, by the way, and Paul, are we 2 weeks away from 2023 budget season starting?
I kind of started this morning.
We did. So here's what's gonna be interesting about the 2023 budget season. For those people that come to town board meetings or watch them on TV or whatever, they might remember that Paul Adams, our finance director, proposed to the board a couple years ago, after going to the Association of Towns, the annual meeting, we don't have a formalized fund policy. We don't have some tangible thing of, do we keep $1 in the bank, or do we keep $1 billion in the bank? In layman terms, if we have $1 billion in the bank at the town level, we are overtaxing the citizens of this town. Why would we have taxed them that much money if we haven't expended the money on services and now have this huge war chest? Do we all agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
But the town never had any tangible parameters to that, which leads to subjective decisions and emotional decisions, especially as the town board changes over time, right? Very good proposal, Paul, that led to this town board approving a fund balance policy. Now, when it was approved, we had already done the 2021 budget. When we did the 2022 budget last year, where our numbers fell on all these funds was right in between the minimum and the max, I think, right?
For the most part.
Right. That might not be the case as we move forward into this year. So, will the fund balance policy that we adopted 2 years ago affect how we handle the 2023 budget? It very well could. Because Bill, as you know, I won't even be coy about it, we've blown the doors off of sales tax. The revenue we brought in from sales tax the last couple of years has been so much more for every town. Everybody thought we were going to get crushed in COVID. Nobody's going to buy anything. Holy cow, I guess one thing about staying at home is that they love Amazon.
And mortgage tax.
Thank you. I left the mortgage business too early because I should have been in on that, but that's another story. Now, the question is, did everybody see on the news? Our county executive announced that we're only going to do gas tax on $2. Not up to, if it's anything above $2 a gallon, we're not going to have that tax. Is that good news? It's good news, right? You pay less at the pump. Is that sales tax?
I believe a piece of that is sales tax.
Piece of that is sales tax, Paul. So you got a moving target here, and we're going to have to assess that, Bill, as a board, when we're in the middle of this budget. To make more complexity, and as you know, I've said to you many times, Bill, the budget process is 12 months. So we're going to have to look at that fund balance policy and where we're at, right? And we're also going to have to look at the question you just asked. Well, do we use the $4 million less the grants that we give out to non-government entities if we decide to award any or whatever non-government entities? And do we say, well, we got ultimate flexibility. You can move that 2.5 for sewer and 1.2 for general services and move and match or whatever. Paul, could you use it to plug into the 2023 budget or 2024 budget? You got to commit the money by the end of 2024, Bill, and you got to spend it by the end of 2026. So, I guess you could say, the heck with all this creativity of sewer and general services and all that. Let's just take the $4 million and spread it over the 23, 24, 25, and 26 budgets, because you got to spend it by 26, and put $1 million toward each year. Could?
Can you, given some of the restrictions in that
That was my question.
document? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, we basically are giving it back to the taxpayers because it's covering things that we
Right.
need and we
Right.
would have purchased anyway.
But,
And you have to show that it's being spent for something.
yes,
So you can't just take it and appropriate to reduce.
That was my
property
question.
yeah,
taxes.
and we can't
No, you can't.
write a rebate check to all our residents and
No.
spend it for,
No, you can't do
so, yeah.
So is it kind of a 6 of this, half a dozen of another?
It is. It is working to reduce the property tax bill.
And the interesting thing about that, and Bill, I know that was your question, is that in a lot of ways, I mean, and I've talked to some other towns, I don't know, if you want to ingratiate yourself politically, boy, that looks really good, doesn't it? But is it in the best interest of the taxpayers today and in the future? I don't know. But these are the decisions we will be making as we move into May, June, July, August, September on the budget. It's gonna be a fun year, isn't it, Bill? I'm looking forward to it.